Hey everybody, my name's Chuck, and today I'm going to be doing a little bit of exploring with my sister. So I met up with my sister, we got a little breakfast, and now she's filling up the Jeep. And we got the doors off, it's pretty cool. I'm going to do a little shameless plug. This is the canoe rental that my sister and brother-in-law own, Lucky's Canoe Rental. It does happen to be right next to where we're going, Caddo Gap, but if you want a canoe, come get it, boys. So before we go ahead and get in Caddo Gap proper, we're gonna go take a look at some old bridges. So what we're gonna be looking at right now is the low water bridge. I think at this point that it's been knocked out, but it's still interesting to take a look and see. I don't know if you can see it, but off in the distance there's the old low water bridge, and I'm assuming this is how you had to get across here and go through the gap. The road kind of goes up behind that cabin. Gotta be careful, sis, don't fall over. I don't want to carry you out. Up there on the side of the cliff, you can kind of see the new road, and then there's a water tower off in the distance. But this right here is the Caddo River, and it flows all the way down to Lake DeGray and goes way up north. So it's kind of all over the place. All right, here's some remnants of the old low water bridge. Let's go ahead and walk up on it. Obviously this would have been a single lane, and this would have been really old. But you can see under the water there where one of the panels has like been toppled over. And then the road would have went up this way. Well, you can see all the panels though. They're all in the water here, aren't they? There's one over there, one here, one here. Yeah. And then the support out in the middle. Hi.
She is my sister.
She is. You can see where they like scalloped the hill out up here and made it so that like there was a flat area for the road to go up, because the wall of the canyon's dug out a little bit. All right, I'm gonna do some hopping here, see if we can get up on this without getting wet. All right, now I'm actually up on the bridge. You can see the remnants all over the place, and you can see that it would not have been a very wide bridge, but then again, it may not have even been facilitating cars when it was made. This may have been made specifically for horses and carriages. Can you imagine this being the only way to get across the Caddo River 100 years ago? Huh. Those boulders are absolutely massive too. Nowadays it is a bit of a walk to get back to this bridge. I nearly died like 8 times. So the road that I'm walking up to now would have been the road that led down to the bridge. And this would have been the way that you got through the gap. A long time ago, that road up there didn't exist. Now, railroad didn't exist. Although I guess the railroad was made at like 1900 or so, but I seriously doubt that the road existed up there. But you would have had to have taken this little walk down this hill, and then you would have had to have went off to the bridge. And then there you have it. Down there is the bridge. We've also got some foundations down here for what were some old cabins that got washed out. Let's go take a look at them. You can see where they had to have had this cabin on some concrete pylons to avoid the flooding in the waters, but I guess maybe it got too intense and it flooded them out. And there's a place up there. And we've got this old foundation over here. This foundation over here is old enough that it's got trees growing on it. So, I mean, it could be 30 or 40 years old. Not just the foundation, but like since there's been a house on it. Then over here we've got another old foundation, but I don't know what kind of cabin this would have been. It would have been fairly small. It couldn't have gone too far back into the hill because there's a big old tree there. That tree is too old to have started growing after this cabin got knocked out. I said it in a previous video, you do not realize how strong water is until you see it knock down just the largest buildings. So it's very bold to build your cabin in what is essentially a flood zone that's already knocked out a low water bridge. It's a pretty nice spot though. We got some cabin rentals down here. If you just wanted to get out of town, this is not a bad spot. This trail right here is where the railroad would have used to have been, and obviously they're using it as like an off-road trail. But this is the same railroad that goes through Amity, Glenwood, the Fort Smith Gurdon Railroad, which no longer exists. So obviously we're on the other side of the river now, and it's kind of hard to determine exactly where the road came into it, but I think I see something right here. The road had to have went up straight this way, but I don't know that it was necessarily following that road. It might have went more straight, because look at how the concrete is oriented over here. Let's see if we can see something. We're on a quest to try to see if we can find evidence of where this old road would have crossed and went down to that low water bridge. It's pretty evident on the other side where it went, but on this side it's a little more vague. So we're up here at the top and we're looking almost straight down at the bridge. And there's just no real way for a road to get down there. The road had to have curved towards the bridge, like off in that direction. Christy and I here are kind of surmising that the road must have went closer to the creek bottom as opposed to going up where the new road is at. Maybe it went under where the railroad was at. So we're gonna walk around and see if we can't figure that out. We got a chunk of old concrete down here, but it's way up from where the bridge would actually be. The bridge would be, oh, maybe 150, 200 yards that way. So it makes me wonder if it didn't come from like another bridge or something, or maybe the road itself. At this point, the road along the river is getting kind of growed up, so we're going to go along the trestle and see if we can't find where that old road maybe crossed over. This right here is where the tracks would have went off, and then down here is where the actual road goes now. So I think I can see a gap up there. So we came down here to where the bridge crosses over, and you can see the old supports for the old railroad trestle, but they decided to cut them out. Maybe because they thought the trestle would be dangerous and people would try to cross it. You can see the pilings here, and over there, and over there. Pretty neat piece of history. And through movie magic, we're back in the Jeep.
Magic.
While we were driving along, we noticed that some of the pilings were still out here for the old train trestle where it crosses the... Is this the Caddo still? Maybe Collier Creek, maybe the Caddo. I'm not sure. But they're pretty big. Pretty cool though. Here's the old foundation where it would have came off on this side of the creek. You can tell that they put the concrete work really low to make it stable and to keep it from washing out, I'm assuming, over time. Here's the other side of the concrete foundation where the bridge would have came off, or rather the trestle for the railroad. Still standing today, still hasn't been eroded. Now we're walking down to the swinging bridge access. The swinging bridge is a old historic bridge that was, as it implies, swinging. It's basically some ropes that had boards across it. And I'll try to post a video of it, or not a video rather, but an old picture of it. But we're gonna get to see the remains of it today. So obviously behind me is the swinging bridge. Can you imagine climbing all the way up there just to go across the Caddo River? It's got to be like every bit of like 30 feet tall. That's kind of a weird way to handle that problem.
Here's a little AI animation of what it would have looked like from an old photo. Man, that just feels real sketchy.
And then further down the river, the bridge that I'm assuming replaced it is an old concrete bridge. It's got some metal supports. That way you didn't have to try to walk over that sketchy thing all the time. You can see where some flooding has happened, and there's some trees that are lodged up underneath it, and just various branches. And it almost looks like the concrete is getting washed out from under the pylons. So it's kind of sketchy. Well, can you imagine the kind of flood that gets this many trees and wedges them up against the bridge? It's even more incredible is the fact that it didn't knock it down. There's like an absolute ton of trees that are washed up. We're going to try to see if we can't get a little bit better view of the swinging bridge from the middle of the river as well. It looks like at some point there was a low water bridge that went across here, and you can see the concrete, like not residue, but the leftovers. You can see where it came off the creek here and went across, and then there's some concrete over at the top over there. I guess that you had to use the hanging bridge whenever the low water bridge was flooded. It was a way to guarantee that these people could get to town and get supplies. Man, it feels sketchy. Oh, it's crazy. You can see pieces of the actual concrete and rebar under the water here. The big old slab that my sister's standing on. I don't know if you can see it over there, but there's a hummingbird, and it's like checking out all these trumpet flowers on the side of the river. Hi, hummingbird. Oh yeah, you can see him fluttering about, he or she or it. Here's the other side of the swinging bridge. This kind of gives you an idea of what you were dealing with, and I guess the planks would have went all the way up these wires. The wires would have been the supporting mechanism for the entire bridge. And then over here you can see where a single lane low water bridge that we've been talking about would have went off and crossed whenever you actually wanted to drive. And there's asphalt here, like at some point this is the way you just drove up here. This is the bridge that they have to replace those two bridges today. I'll have to see if I can't find a date that this was made. There may be something on it, or I may have to do some research on the internet. Doesn't even have any guardrails. You just kind of go across and hope for the best. Right here, there's like a little bit of a drawing, inscription, whatever, in the concrete that says 8284. So this must have been made in 1984. Now we find ourselves in the actual town of Caddo Gap. It's not a huge town, but there are a lot of historic buildings. It'll be interesting to see what all we can figure out. This right here is the general Mercantile Store that is ran in Caddo Gap Mercantile. And I can't remember the name of the guy, but the guy that owns this has a YouTube channel, and I'll actually link it so you can check out what he has going on. Got all sorts of stuff going on. Visit historic Gap Mercantile, established 1932. They've got all sorts of old farming equipment sitting outside as well. What is that? Maybe some sort of like motor, steam motor. Old wheelbarrow. There's an old gas pump. Plows. Here's an old stagecoach that they bring out for events, and they keep it next to the Mercantile Store. I don't know exactly what this building would have been, but I assume that it was an old gas station. It has a canopy like you would park under it, and then it has what appears to be the foundations for some pumps. Maybe it wasn't, maybe it was some other type of station, but Usually when you have a canopy like this, it's to get you out of the elements.
And sure enough, as you would expect, it was indeed a filling station. Here's an old picture of it to give you some perspective.
Here we have the bank of Caddo Gap. This building was made in 1929. I can imagine coming here in 1930 and trying to withdraw your money.
We just need money.
I don't know if you can see it from here, but there's a little Native American wind vane on top. Obviously, Caddo Gap is named after the fact that there was a gap in the mountains that the Caddo River went through, and the Caddo Indians did inhabit this area, and inhabited all the area along the Caddo River. You can find Indian artifacts all over the place, and in Norman, which is a town not too far from here, there's actually an Indian burial mound. It was said, I think, in the 1500s, and I'll have to give you an exact date, Hernando de Soto came through here and had a conflict with some of the Native Americans, the Tua, I want to say, but that's kind of up for debate as well. But yeah, this is a very historic area, and it's always been kind of a focal point for travel because of its location and the gap that the Caddo River followed. There's the ruins of an old building over here, and it has a concrete foundation that looks pretty weathered. The bricks are in the same style as the possible service station across the street. There are lots of old style homes here as well, and some of these homes are very possibly historic. They could be as old as the town is. The town was actually being settled, I want to say, like in 1815, 1820, but it didn't really start to gather citizens until more like the 1830s or 40s. So this town is pre-Civil War, and it was very integral to moving around in this area. You had to go through here in order to be able to go between places further south and further north. This mountain range would be fairly impermeable unless you had a pass that allowed you to go through easily. I recall my sister saying that she thought this might have been an old doctor's office at some point. You can see this beautiful home up here, which is in the style of houses that were all built in the area in maybe the 20s and 30s. They typically had these really tall roofs. This one was a 2-story, and that was so that it would stay cooler, especially in the summer, because they didn't have air conditioning. Of course, they would have a chimney, which they do on the side, so it wasn't as big a deal to insulate in the winter, but I'm sure it still got pretty cold. This reminds me a lot of the style of my great-grandmother's house that's next to my mom and dad's, in which they built those really tall ceilings, and the entire design kind of reminds me of that. Further up the street here, we actually have the monument to De Soto, the conflict between De Soto and the Native Americans. And I'm gonna say this was established in like the 1930s, 1936, something like that. And it's also got some infographics around it that are really interesting about the area. It looks like these elephant ears are being watered by what is like a spring or something, but goodness, they're huge. Maybe that was part of the curative properties, the minerals that the waters possess. And over here we have a little scenic walkway made by, it looks like, high schoolers from Caddo Hills, Caddo Gap, whatever school. So let's take a walk over it. It's pretty cool how they have this set up to where you can overlook this pond. They have some of the stone from the original high school that was in the area. And then they have this addendum in order to kind of commemorate the board of directors of the school back then. All along the concrete walk here, they have the inlay of all the names of the people that helped make this little memorial to the Caddo Gap High School. But it's pretty wore down now, and it's kind of hard to read any of the names. On the back of the sign here, it does say that this was the location of the actual school, so why the memorial's here. Here's an old photo of the school and the gymnasium. The gymnasium will be on the left and the school will be on the right. Now we're walking up to the road where there's like a spring with an inscription on it. Pretty interested in seeing what that's about. Film with my phone because my camera's overheating. It's a very hot day, but let's walk down and take a look at these springs. Obviously we've got a little bench here to where you can sit and reflect upon the springs and what might have been a little walkway. I can't tell exactly. And here's the actual house for the springs. It says Ida Suvlet Cobb's Shadow Haven Spring since 1932 by Philander Cobb, 1959. And sure enough, there's water still pouring out of it to this day. That's the thing about Arkansas. Arkansas has all of these springs all over the place. That's the reason why hot springs exist. But just in general, groundwater bubbles up all over the place, and but it's also kind of magical and majestic. And on the back of this, we have a little inscription that says Ida S. Cobb Spring. Who knows when that was made necessarily. Probably when the spring was originally discovered. Even further up, you can see like a stone pillar, and then you can see where this has all been collected as spring water. The spring seems to originate further up than that little shack. Because of all the water, you can see how big mushrooms tend to grow around it, and that's a big one in particular. It's like 3/4 the size of my hand. Mushroom, mushroom. Mushroom, mushroom. Obviously, Caddo Gap doesn't have a lot of people, but apparently it has enough people to have a post office, and this, frankly, blows my mind. I want to say the original post office here was named Centerville. I don't know where that building's at. I mean, I could take a video of every building, and maybe it's one of them, but there's no more than 100 people, and we have a post office in the area. I have to assume that it serves more than that. I don't know if Hopper, for instance, has a post office, so maybe it's centrally located in a place that has a large population. But then on this street, we've got a really old church with a stone foundation built around it. I have a feeling the stone foundation might be a little bit newer, but the actual foundation of the church looks very, very old. It says here that Caddo Gap Baptist Church welcomes you. Well, thank you for welcoming me, church. We've got some old like inscriptions in the concrete here, and it says that the congregation was established in 1905. You can tell that the building has underwent changes because there are stairs that just lead to literally nowhere. And then this building had to have been added on after the fact because it looks a little more modern. Yeah, this is an old building that is very polished. I went to the Heritage Festival last year. It happens maybe in September or October. I don't remember exactly when, but they had this sitting up at the front by the road, and they had all sorts of like old tractors, they had trappers, they had blacksmiths, they had all sorts of stuff for sale, food. They do a lot around this area to really celebrate the heritage of Caddo Gap, and that's what Caddo Gap is. This is a small heritage museum that reminds us of a certain history that exists in Arkansas. This was a gateway for people to travel, but before that, it was the home of tribes of Indians that grew, I'm sure, crops in all these big flat open fields around us in this fertile valley. And then obviously the Vaught plantations were a big deal as well because they recognized the value of that after the Native Americans had been forced off these lands. So when you look at this place, you look at a place that's frozen in time. You look at a place in history that is important to remember, and I'm glad that the town seems to be fairly well preserved and restored. There's very little that's like just absolutely decrepit, and I'm glad that I get the opportunity to bring this to you guys. I hope you enjoyed it. If you like this kind of content, please feel free to subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Also, I'd like to give a big thanks to my sister, Christy. She was kind enough to drive me around and help me make this video, and honestly, she treats me way better than I deserve. So if you see her, thank her. I'm definitely going to be. Thanks for watching, and if you want to see more videos like this, feel free to subscribe to the channel.